What's up, guys, and welcome back to the Dan Cave, and we're back with another tier list. So you guys saw last month's tier list, and that was actually a couple weeks before, well, we got all the changes to the Guardians. And yes, I mean all of the changes. Guys, they revamped all of the characters in this game practically, especially all the ones that were at the bottom. So we're going to be looking at the tier list today, and we're going to see where everybody landed after that. But before we jump into that tier list, I want to thank all you guys for hitting that sub. We have made the YouTube partner program, so I appreciate you guys for everything that you do. If you'd like to support the channel, make sure to hit the sub button below, watch as many videos as you can. But we've also got memberships. So if you want to sign up for one of those memberships, we're going to be doing a lot of perks and things like that. So make sure to check that, including getting lists like this a couple days early. So as always, guys, make sure to leave a comment below with any of the decisions that I made that you may not agree with. And that's okay, because this tier list is always evolving and I'm always taking feedback from the community within this. So with that being said, we're going to jump into it. I'm going to explain a couple things before we actually pull up the first role. Now this tier list, I break it down based on role so that you can look at this and determine, is this the characters you want to invest in when you're looking at that particular role. There's a lot of great Guardians in this list, in this game, but when it comes to the roles, you're not going to invest in 10 of the same role. You're going to spread that out throughout your journey in the Mirrorverse. And that's why I want to make sure when you're spreading that love, you are picking the right ones for the particular role. Now in the background, I'm also not just going based on favorites or anything like that. I do have calculations all in the back looking at where these Guardians can be used. Can they be used on multiple towers? Are there events in the game? I've tracked at least 7 or 8 events so far to make sure I know who's getting bonuses so that we can figure that into the scores. We've also looked at one-on-one. Who's the better Guardian for one-on-one, given points there? Which Guardians are the best in the actual towers? Not just the ones with the traits, but the ones that you're going to want to invest in to use because we know they can clear level 30. We're also taking into account some of the other factors, which are how easy are they to play? Which ones are you going to use the most throughout your journey? And, well, which ones truly are the best, whether it's the way they support, the damage that they do, or maybe all that damage that they're going to tank for you. So there's a lot of factors in this. There's a lot of math in the background, but I want you guys to understand that we're working with a community. A lot of people have these characters at Astro 1 Plus that are doing testing so that we can make sure that the list that you guys get has actually been tested, because a lot of the times when you look at these Guardians, they look great on paper. Well, you get them in the real world and they're not as good as you would think they are. So with that being said, we're going to jump into it and we're going to start with the ranged. So if you guys are new to tier lists, we're going to break this down S through D, and we're going to make sure that we're looking to make sure there's a good curve within these roles. So first up, I'm going to look at C and D. And well, there's a lot of movement. Like I said, a lot of changes that happened, and there may be some that surprise you. So we've got Eve dropping 3 spots. And yes, those errors that we're going to see, they're going to indicate how many spots they've dropped. Eve just really doesn't hit the mark. There's too many tech ranged characters now, and Eve is just on the bottom of that list. And because of that, it kind of negates everything that her tag is for. And that's why she's kind of going all the way down to the bottom. Next up, we have Goofy. Goofy's dropped 6 spots. I know this is crazy. We just moved him up last month, but with all the changes, well, Goofy just kind of fell out of favor. We've also got Hades and Tink. They're making their way up a little bit. Tink was in last. She got a pretty big rework. Still not the greatest Guardian, but she did make it in front of these other 2. And Hades, well, he's just kind of hanging on down in those bottom tiers. All right, so next up, we have B. And the only big change here is Merida. We've got Maleficent kind of staying around at that bottom of the B list, very close to C, even with her rework, but we do have Merida kind of starting to make a comeback. Now, a lot of people really like Merida, and now that we're able to test her at really high levels, she is starting to get a little bit better, but I'm telling you guys, there's better Guardians than these. They're going to help you through the first a little bit of the game. But once you hit that mid game, a lot of these Guardians are just going to feel too weak to be using. All right, so next up, we're going to go to A. In A class, you can see we've got another big changes here. We've got Judy dropping 2 spots. So she used to be at the top of the A. We've got Tron falling down a little bit as well. I mean, he was S last month. But really, when we started, you use him and kind of get in there. Same thing there. There's just better Guardians to use instead of Tron. And I do have high hopes that Tron's going to go up again, especially with the fact that we've got something like Rift Raids, and we may have some more big battlefields with a lot of enemies and things like that, which is where Tron is going to shine. But for now, he's kind of falling down because of our new tech Guardian that we'll talk about in a minute. Now, Buzz is also making a little bit of a jump here, getting to the top of the A class. And realistically, Buzz has always been really good. He's just kind of been one of those Guardians that you leave behind, especially when you have these S tier Guardians. So now that we're moving on to the S tier, well, you can guess it. We've got Zerg coming in as the brand new character. And this time, I honestly think he's dethroning Gaston. Now, the only reason I say that is Zerg is much easier to use than Gaston. You pretty much just go to the back, just light him up with your machine gun. You don't have to worry about anything. But when it comes to Gaston, he's still going to be doing that damage. And trust me, guys, if you haven't seen a level 90 Gaston, I'm talking about you, Ibby. Gaston does some serious damage. He has like 36k plus when he's doing his crits. So you can't sleep on him, but I still think Zerg right now is just a little bit better with the fact that he's way easier to play and he does just as much damage in that route. Man, once you get him to 4 stars, that route can just lock down Guardians. So this all in all, really great group, and we're starting to see the rise of the ranged characters. Again, they kind of were really good back in the day. They really hit a stride where you didn't want to play with them. But now with Gaston really showing out, and now we have Zerg really making that call that range could be some of your main characters, I have a feeling that we're going to see the rise of range over the next few months. All right, so now we're going to move on to the tanks. And with the tanks, we've got a couple big changes as well over here. So we've got Sully. Man, he's fallen. He's fallen hard and fast all the way to the bottom, dropping 4 spots. And again, this is one of those surprises because Sully was starting to make his way up, but with the refreshes that we got, the ways that these Guardians are working, Sully just kind of really starts to lackluster in that mid game and early end game. Now, again, you can get Sully maxed out and he's going to kind of start to come back a little bit again, but really that mid game, which is what a lot of people are starting to get into, you're going to notice Sully just doesn't really stack up like he used to. Now, with more testing with someone like Zerg and having those tech traits, maybe he can make his way back up in next month's list. But for now, we're throwing him all the way at the bottom. We just feel like there's other tank Guardians that are showing out a little bit more. All right, so coming in to B, we've got Genie. We've got Genie coming up 2 spots. Now, Blue was at the very bottom at one point. Genie actually replaced him last month. But Blue got a rework. He started to creep up into that C and kind of lock in that C position, and Genie just kind of leapfrogged him over into B. Now, I still don't think Genie is the best Guardian whatsoever, but really in this early game, being able to withstand and go invincible is really, really key for some of these teams. Talking about Genie, I still think he's going to be pretty good near the end game, but he's still just lacklusters with some of the other tanks, especially when we get into A and S. Oogie dropping a spot, moving out of A into B, but you'll see why in a minute. And, you know, he's still a very great Guardian. He still is a tank that can take a lot of damage, but his gifts, his skills, his abilities, they just don't really give us exactly what we want just yet. All right, so moving up into A, we've got Donald. We've got Donald coming up a couple spots here. He's been slowly creeping up into A this time around, and it really goes down to his tech trait, his seafaring trait, and the fact that he can do a lot of damage, and people are starting to understand how to use him. Baymax just kind of locking out that A right there, and again, I know there's a lot of people that don't like Baymax, especially in that middle game, but Baymax is really, really good once you know how to play him. And he's not a tank that you can just let run around. You're actually going to have to play him from time to time because you want to make sure that you're giving all your allies that defense bonus and making sure they stay in that aura. Baymax is one of those characters that I still feel like is on the cusp of S, but you do need to learn how to play with him. All right, so lastly, we have the S tier, and nothing's changed here. We still have Mr. Incredible right there at that top spot. I believe Maui is right here in S as well. I know there's some other tier list out there that has Maui a little bit lower, but honestly, guys, even after the nerf, even after the change, if you pair him with a character like Jack Skellington where you know exactly how to use him. He's going to do really well with you, and he will show out why he is so good. All right, so that is the tanks, and we're going to move on over to the supports. Now, we know everybody loves a good support, and that is why I am really excited about this part of the tier list, because a lot has changed with the supports. So we're going to look at C and D, and there's a little bit of movement down here. You can see Jack Sparrow falling down into C. He really falls in the same category that we talked about with Eve. He has great traits, but when you get to that middle game, there's a lot of other better characters, and there's a lot of better characters with those traits to where he just kind of falls down to the bottom. Now, Ian did get a rework, so he did get moved up just a little bit into C, and Mike falling down in D. Now, the biggest thing here, and I say this all the time, there are really no terrible guardians when it comes to this game, especially with the updates that happened in the game. We've just kind of crunched it. So again, where we're looking at S and where we're looking at D, if you looked at that a month or two ago, there was a giant gap in between those. Now that gap is a lot smaller, so even a character in D like Mike is still a pretty good character, but for your support, you're usually looking for some type of healing or some type of really good buff, and he just doesn't quite do it as well as the rest of them. All right, so traveling over into B, same thing here. We've got some shakeups. We've got Frank dropping 4 spots. That's pretty huge, knocking him out of A. We've got Belle moving up 2 spots into the B. And really, Belle is making that move specifically because of this royalty tower. And again, we have no tank in that particular trait. So you have Belle, you have Tiana really being the crutch of those teams to give you the healing to make your way through. You've got Evil Queen also falling just 1 spot. And really, this is just coming from the fact that what was propping both of those guys up, Frank and Evil Queen, was the fact of 1v1, but with some new tweaks here, because again, a lot of people made it through 1v1 or they have other characters they're using. I just don't think it's as much of a deal to invest in as it was last month when they first announced 1v1 and we were looking at all the rewards. Now, they're still great characters, but same thing there. You're just not really going to use them as much, but a B tier character is still a great character to invest in if these are some of the best ones that you have when it comes to your stars. All right, so moving up into A, well, here's where we get our shakeup. We got Tiana moving up into the A, and this goes to the exact same things we talked about with Belle, except for she's also going to give you a great stun. And then we have Scrooge McDuck. Well, Scrooge made his way to B last month, and he is just continuing to move up. With the rise of these ranged guardians that we talked about before, we had Tron come in, we had Zerg come in, and now we're seeing the craziness that is Gaston with his crits. Scrooge is a linchpin when it comes to any of these ranged characters, and this is the reason why he's continuing to move up. Now, I don't think he's S tier quite yet. His heal was improved, and this focus that he's giving to the team is amazing, but I just feel like he's just right on the outside. If I had a choice between him and Mickey or any of the S tiers we're going to say, he kind of falls right outside that unless I'm specifically playing Zerg or I'm specifically playing Gaston. I'm probably not going to use him, which is the reason why I have him just on the outside right below those particular characters. And like we mentioned, Mickey's right there in A great guardian all around. And honestly, if we get a couple more support guardians and we add 1 more spot in the S tier, there is a high chance that Mickey takes that spot. My biggest problem with Mickey is once you start to really get into your very focused synergy teams, Mickey just kind of falls right out of that. And the reason being, Mickey is great for any team, but he doesn't really have high synergies to go with teams. So again, if you're new to the game, if you're mid game, if you're needing a healer, he's going to be amazing with his heals and his stuns and things like that. But once you get those very, very highly focused teams, you usually have somebody that has a little bit more synergy than Mickey in that team. And speaking of synergy, that's where it comes into the S tier, and this really hasn't changed either. We have Jack Skellington, and then we have Hero. They're just taking over the S tier. They're used on most all the teams. And again, with the rise of these tech characters, Hero is doing major work on teams. And I recommend if you open one to go after him. Now, Jack Skellington is one of those characters that a lot of you guys, if you're starting the Mirrorverse, haven't really seen or been able to use. He will eventually come around in the Famed Crystals. And I honestly really think he's still one of the best guardians in the game. because of the fact that he does everything. Now, I say this every time, he is a jack of all trades, but really he is. He does damage, he does buffs, he does heals, he does debuffs. He does it all, and this is the reason why he's still holding on to that top spot over there in S. All right, so let's make our way over to the last group, and that group is going to be the melee group. So this group may actually be the group that got the biggest change up because you're not seeing Minnie at all in this D tier. Now, Minnie's been D tier forever, pretty much since the game came out. She just really felt lackluster and a lot of people didn't invest in her, but she got a huge update, and we're going to see where she's going to land on this tier list. But we are seeing Anger dropping, wow, 6 spots all the way down to the D tier. And well, he just doesn't really fit anywhere. He's a great guardian. He does a lot of damage, but there's a lot of guardians in here that do a lot of damage. And because he doesn't really fit on many teams, he's just finding himself down at the bottom of the list. Now, Hook is probably, at this point, maybe one of the worst characters in the game. It's sad because he has 2 important traits. He has Leader and Seafaring, but, well, he just doesn't really do anything for a team. As we look at the C tier, you're going to see 2 other faces that I know a lot of people in the comments will tell me I'm wrong, but we have Hercules and we have Mulan just really fighting to get out of that C tier. I want them to be better, and honestly, I think they can be. I think, just like we talked about before, I think Rift Raids could be what brings Hercules out of these low tiers, but his traits are just not good. And it's funny, but Mulan has the same issue. They do great damage, they do great things, but when we look at synergies and we look at usefulness in the game, and this tier list does a lot around usefulness, because I want to make sure when you guys invest in a Guardian, if you can only invest in 5 or 6, especially the free-to-play people, I don't want you investing in somebody who's not going to help you in those towers where you can get your books. I don't want you guys to invest in someone that can't really help you in events and things like that. So these are the reasons why they're low on my list, but they're still really great Guardians. And if you looked at the overall, melee tends to be the better Guardians in the game anyway. So they're definitely better than a lot of Guardians in the game. But most of your teams are going to consist of 1 melee. And if I'm honest, you're going to want to invest in a very good one that can be used in many different modes. All right, so next up in the B, we have a lot of people moving up at this point. We've got Woody coming up, we've got Rapunzel, and we've got Anna. Now, this whole tier was really a 3-way tie, and we had a few others like Mulan that were so close to being a tie when it came to the numbers, but I kind of have them sitting like this. Now, I don't know if Woody is going to stay here in B moving forward, but right now I like him in B. Right now he does very well here. He kind of is this melee ranged character that you can use. He can do a little bit of control. He can boost your damage, but he's still not one of the best characters to invest in, which is why he's also at the lower end of B. Now, Anna, she kind of came up. I like her personally. I think she does a lot of cool stuff, but if I had to really be honest, I think that Rift Raids will have something to do with her. It's very interesting that we just had the event right before global launch, and they decided to bring it back this quick instead of doing something like a Hades event or even doing something like Tron. So I really do feel like she is going to be tied in some way to Rift Raids. If she's not, she may fall a little bit, but trust me guys, she's a very good character. You're going to see the A's and the S are still going to be better than everybody below them. All right, so now we're getting into the A, and this is where we're going to see big changes. We've got Aladdin dropping 2 spots. He used to be at the top of A, but we've got Minnie. So we've got Minnie making her way up all the way from D all the way to A, and that's 9 spots she jumped. Her rework is insane. She is so good as a brawler. She does a lot of damage. And well, she gets even better. So when she's attacking the same target, she's going to continue to get buffs of stacks of attack on top of the buff she's already getting, and she can do a lot of damage. So I know we're talking a lot about Rift Raids, and we just put a video out yesterday talking about what we think they're going to be. If they're in any way a one-on-one against big raid-like monsters, Minnie is going to be a monster when we get there. So Iron Minnie, she made her way up to A, and we're going to see if maybe she can make her way up to S tier next month if we get more information around those. Now, Snow White, she moved up 1 spot, just kind of capping off that A tier, and I'm not sure who's actually better, Minnie or Snow White, But honestly, Snow White just has a couple more talents, a couple more traits that put her just slightly ahead of Minnie right now. But that doesn't mean that'll be the case next month as we really start to see what comes to the game. All right, and so lastly, we have the S tier. It's the same two we've seen for several months now. Ariel still holding on to that S tier, still holding on to that top spot, even after her changes. Now, I know that's surprising. A lot of people looked at it and said, what? You can't get as many attack stacks and things like that. But I'm telling you guys, if you're still using her, she still does a whole lot of damage. She's still very good to play with. And if you have the right team, you're still swinging up at least double your power in your different battles. So she's going to hold on to that top spot. Scar is going to kind of just make up the rest of the S tier. And again, I like Scar in there. He has a lot of areas that he can be used, and that's really what's keeping him here. Now, if we start to see some really big Snow Whites come in and we can really test her at level 90 and things like that, maybe she's going to take the place of Scar. But as of now, Scar's doing really well, and he actually is used as a bonus character in quite a few events. And this is the reason why he's going to go ahead and fill out the rest of that S tier. All right, guys, so that is the tier list. This is the July role-based tier list, and I will have this graphic out probably later tomorrow. I want to make sure people watch the video, they check it out and all of that, but I will get this graphic out the day after this video releases, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. Now, like I said before, leave a comment below. Let me know which ones that you actually liked, which ones that you didn't. And let me know also, what character do you want a breakdown of? Now, if you haven't seen, I've been doing my Mirrorverse Minute. I'll put the playlist right up here, and you can check out at least the 2 Guardians that I've gotten done so far. But I'm going to be putting out a lot of these. It's going to break down a Guardian in 1 minute to let you know what talents to use, what teams you can put them with, and a little bit of gameplay so that you can see their specials. I appreciate you so much. And with that being said, y'all take it easy.